Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Javad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India is committing grave human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Addressing a ceremony to mark International Human Rights Day, he said Kashmiris are being subject to systematic state violence. He added that India has enacted laws that are discriminatory against Muslims. Pakistan has strongly condemned India's reprehensible tactics against it that have been exposed by the EU DISINFO lab. At a weekly press briefing, the Foreign Office spokesperson said the report revealed a vast network of fake media outlets, think tanks and NGOs serving Indian interests. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry says India not only spread disinformation but also abused international institutions in its desire to malign Pakistan. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Armenia must be held accountable for its atrocities in Nagorno-Karabakh. He said this while addressing a parade in Baku to mark Azerbaijan's decisive victory in 6-week war against Armenia. Detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India is committing grave human rights violations in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Addressing a ceremony to mark World Human Rights Day, he said Kashmiris are being subject to systematic state violence. The Foreign Minister said thousands of women were raped by Indian troops in the occupied valley. He said India has enacted laws that are discriminatory against Muslims. The Foreign Minister also questioned the world's silence over Indian atrocities in the valley.
Human rights system has been completely undermined in Jammu and Kashmir. The unspeakable atrocities and the grave humanitarian tragedy is known to all of us, that the world is watching silently. The utter disregard of fundamental rights in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir is being overlooked.
An independent NGO, EU DISINFO Lab, has uncovered a global network of pro-Indian fake websites aimed at influencing decision-making at the UN and the EU. Operating in 116 countries, the network of over 550 websites is aimed at producing and amplifying content to undermine Pakistan and China. The Disinformation Watchdog said the operation created several NGOs in charge of events favoring Indian interests. It said the operation had resurrected several dead officials at the UN and used their names in fake reports and statements. EU DISINFO Lab said Indian actors circulated content from fake news outlets on national news agencies, targeting audiences worldwide. The network was also found involved in garnering support from international institutions against its rivals. Two Pakistani soldiers have been martyred in Indian ceasefire violations in the Kuirata sector along the line of control. In a tweet, the Pakistani Army's spokesperson, Major General Babar Iftikhar, identified the troops as Lance Naik Tariq and Sipoy Zaroof. He said Pakistani troops responded befittingly and killed 2 Indian soldiers. India has committed more than 2,000 ceasefire violations in 2020 alone. In Afghanistan, a female journalist has been killed in the city of Jalalabad. Malalai Maiwand was on her way to the office when unknown assailants attacked her car. Spokesman for the provincial governor said the incident occurred in Golai Araban area in the police district 3 of the city. Ataullah Khogiani said her driver was also shot and killed in the attack. He added that the journalist at Inikas Radio and TV in Nangarhar was also an activist in the province. No group, including the Taliban, have claimed the responsibility for the attack so far. The UN says Bangladesh must allow safety assessment of a remote island where it relocated 1,600 Rohingya refugees last week. In a statement, the UN human rights investigator said the verification process of refugees was in the best interest of all. Thomas Andrews said the UN will assure Dhaka of the suitability of Basan Chart to host refugees or identify possible changes. He said they have not been allowed to carry out a technical and safety assessment of the island. Bangladesh says it is transferring only people who are willing to go with an aim to ease overcrowding in its camps. But humanitarian workers say some of the Rohingya have been coerced into going to the island. In Baku, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has attended a parade to mark Azerbaijan's decisive victory against Armenia. The army showcased military hardware and weapons it seized from Armenia during the 6-week war. In his address, Erdogan praised Azerbaijan for restoring its territorial integrity after almost 3 decades. He said Armenia must be held accountable for the atrocities it committed in Nagorno-Karabakh. Erdogan said Turkey and Azerbaijan are one nation with 2 states. The visit came weeks after Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed on a deal that secures Baku's territorial gains in Nagorno-Karabakh. Iran says it is ready for the U.S. return to the 2015 nuclear deal. In an interview, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Washington needs to fulfill its commitments to the pact. He said it was a legal agreement reached between Iran and 6 world powers and enshrined in the UN Security Council Resolution 2231. He said President-elect Joe Biden should note that certain issues, including Iran's missile program, are not negotiable. Biden has indicated his willingness to return to the 2015 deal so long as Iran also comes back into compliance. Iran has imposed sanctions on the U.S. ambassador to Yemen. Iran's foreign ministry says the envoy was blacklisted for his role in the occurrence of the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. The ministry said the crisis is the biggest tragedy of the century perpetrated by the U.S.-led coalition that wishes to break up Yemen. It said the envoy was designated under a law approved by the Iranian parliament in 2017. The law aims at combating the violations of human rights and the adventurism and terroristic acts of the U.S. in the region. This comes a day after the U.S. sanctioned Tehran's envoy to the embattled country. The U.S. Senate has defeated an attempt to block a $23 billion arms sale to the UAE. 2 procedural votes failed to gain a majority of the 100-member Senate. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said the resolutions fell far short of the 2/3 support that would be needed to overcome a presidential veto. The bipartisan bills were jointly sponsored by 2 Democrats and a Republican senator. Only 2 Democrats opposed the resolutions, while only 1 Republican supported them. President Donald Trump had issued a formal threat to veto congressional efforts to block the planned transfer. The sale is tied to a normalization of ties between the UAE and Israel under the Abraham Accords. China says it will revoke visa exemption treatment for the U.S. diplomat passport holders visiting Hong Kong and Macau. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying announced this at a news conference in Beijing. Hua said the curbs include members of the Congress, personnel at non-governmental organizations, and their family members. The U.S. earlier imposed financial sanctions and travel ban on 14 Chinese officials. They were targeted over their role in adopting a national security law for Hong Kong and Beijing's disqualification last month of elected opposition legislators in the territory. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's son Hunter has said his tax affairs are under investigation by federal prosecutors in Delaware. Hunter Biden says he took the case very seriously but is confident that he has handled his affairs legally and appropriately. The prosecutors are also scrutinizing some of Hunter's Chinese business dealings and other transactions. In a statement, Biden-Harris transition team said Hunter had fought through difficult challenges only to emerge stronger. The 50-year-old Hunter Biden was persistently criticized by Republicans during the 2020 election campaign over alleged quid pro quo in Ukraine and China. He struck his business deals when Biden was vice president. The investigation comes as President-elect Biden assembles his cabinet to take charge of the country in January. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen have failed to break the deadlock in the post-Brexit trade talks. In a statement following her meeting with Johnson, Leyen said the two sides remain far apart on reaching a deal. Leyen said the two sides have agreed to continue negotiations till Sunday in an effort to reach an agreement. Prime Minister Boris Johnson returned to London after the meeting in Brussels. Johnson's spokesperson said very large gaps remained, but talks will continue with a firm decision to reach a deal by Sunday. The UK's chief negotiator, Lord Frost, and EU's Michel Barnier are set to resume talks in Brussels. The International Criminal Court has announced to send a delegation to Libya to inspect the mass graves unearthed in the city of Tarhuna. In a statement, Libyan army said the delegation will also investigate those involved in war crimes. Earlier in July, ICC sent a team to investigate war crimes committed by forces loyal to Libyan warlord Khalifa Haftar. So far, a total of 112 corpses have been found in more than 20 mass graves in Tarhuna since it was recaptured by the Libyan government. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The US has reported more than 3,000 coronavirus-related deaths in a single day for the first time. The nationwide death toll has crossed 289,000. Meanwhile, India has recorded more than 141,000 fatalities and 9.76 million cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 1.5 million lives and infected 68 million people. Details in this report.
Allergic reactions, cyber attacks, record cases, makeshift container hospitals, uncertainty over virus origin, and some cheers dominated the COVID-19 scene over the last 24 hours. Confusion reigned Supreme Court on the European continent, where Germany's BioNTech firm said its vaccine regulation documents were unlawfully accessed after a cyber attack on Europe's medicine regulator. A report has found that coronavirus was spreading in Italy as early as mid-November 2019. 3 months before the first local transmission was detected. Meanwhile, as UK authorities warn people with anaphylaxis history to not get vaccinated after 2 health workers developed allergic reactions, top US infectious disease expert has also cautioned Americans with underlying allergies.
Who do have underlying allergic phenomenon that they might be cautious about vaccination, or at least be prepared to respond with some sort of anecdote to the allergic reaction. So if I were a person that had an underlying allergic tendency, I might want to be prepared that I might get a reaction and therefore be ready to treat it.
The U.S. states of North Carolina, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and many others have reported record hospitalizations. Officials say the availability of intensive care beds is under pressure as the country moves towards a very dark phase of the pandemic. Meanwhile, Canada became the 3rd state after the UK and Bahrain to approve the Pfizer vaccine.
As you know, the Government of Canada has announced that we now have an agreement that will see us receive up to 249,000 doses of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in December 2020. At this moment, we now have the first authorized COVID-19 vaccine through Health Canada's rigorous testing and regulatory process.
Over in Australia, scientists have developed a rapid genome sequencing method which will cut the time required to trace the source of coronavirus cases to 4 hours. As the latest wave shows little sign of abating in South Korea, authorities say they will be building hospital beds in shipping containers.
In Pakistan, 56 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 8,603. The Health Ministry says over 3,000 people tested positive for the disease overnight. The ministry said there are more than 46,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of more than 429,000 countrywide cases, over to 374,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 189,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 125,000 cases. In the capital Islamabad, over 33,000 have been infected so far. US President Donald Trump's childhood home is up for sale for the fourth time in 4 years. The home is set at a below $3 million target price that the auctioneer hopes his admirers will pay. More in this report.
When Donald Trump's childhood home in Queens was on the market 4 years ago, he was then a candidate for president and publicly mused about buying it himself. Now, he might not have to. The home's latest owner is launching a crowdfunding campaign with the goal of giving the 5-bedroom Tudor in Jamaica Estates to the president as a gift. But this will happen once the $3 million price tag is met.
The property is owned by an investor who purchased it from one of our previous auctions, which was held actually on January 17th, 2017, 3 days before Trump was inaugurated. And that investor is now looking to sell the property. We're raising money to purchase the property and then donate it to Trump or a charity of his choice.
Trump's late father Fred built the 5-bedroom home with a fireplace and narrow driveway in 1940. In 1950, when Trump was 4, Fred moved the family into a grand 23-room mansion he built on 2 lots behind the backyard. The house was advertised on Airbnb in 2017 with photos of life-size Trump cardboard cutouts in the rooms with bunk beds for over $700 a night. Trump can donate the funds to a charity or turn the property into a presidential library, museum, or national historic site.
As long as $3 million or more is raised, 50% of the proceeds above that goal will be donated to a charity. If sufficient funds aren't raised, that will also all be donated to charity. All proceeds.
The campaign raised $125 by last night, including from Trump haters. Paramount Realty first sold the house in 2016 for about $1.4 million for a family who had lived there for 7 or 8 years. The buyer hired Paramount to flip it.
2020 was definitely the year of the mask. In a bid to stop pollution from the use of disposable masks, a South Korean student is turning them into furniture. More in this report.
How many disposable masks does it take to make a stool? Kim Han-Yul knows it takes 1,500. Bothered by the waste caused by disposable face masks, many of which are made of polypropylene, the South Korean furniture design student has come up with an eco-friendly solution, melting them to make stools he calls stack and stack.
Plastic is recyclable, but why don't we recycle face masks which are made of plastic? I was doubtful about why masks are being incinerated, so as a person who makes furniture, I wanted to show we can recycle them.
It takes him about 3 hours to make a stool, and he has made 15 so far. He created the stools for his graduation exhibition, and they became popular among his schoolmates.
I couldn't imagine that they were made of face masks. As I see it now, they look really nice, and I want to put them in my house. So I asked him for one. My friends also asked whether they can buy one.
Kim said these tools are not for sale just yet. He is planning to expand the concept into a whole furniture series. Still, he said money is not his primary goal. He is hoping to team up with a company that share his environmental goals.
Researchers believe they have found a previously unknown species of beaked whale in waters of Mexico's western coast. If confirmed, the new species will mark a significant discovery among giant mammals. More about the discovery in this report.
While determining a new species is a rare event, experts believe they have found a unique discovery. Researchers have found a rare species of typically shy-beaked whales near Mexico's remote San Benito Islands. They did not realize they were seeing a potential new species until later when studying photos they took of the animals. Beaked whales, named for their pointy dolphin-like snouts, are found mostly in remote waters, such as off the San Benito Islands.
What we ended up finding was another beaked whale species. It was clear it was a beaked whale. They surfaced very close to the boat, and then they came to us 2-3 times. They came back to the boat. They were investigated the hydrophone that we put in the water. It was the most amazing encounter of beaked whales that I've ever had.
Marine mammal biologist Jay Barlow says the whale's teeth were unusually placed. Underwater recordings of the whale's calls also suggested they were unique. Scientists are now awaiting the analysis of water samples that can hold skin cells for possible DNA testing to confirm whether the whales are a new species.
Over the next several days, as we reviewed the data, all the photographs, the underwater images that Sea Shepherd took, the acoustic data that we collected in the vicinity of the animal, it became clear we didn't see Perrin's beaked whale. We saw something new, something that was not expected in this area, something that doesn't match, either visually or acoustically, anything that's known to exist.
Though up to 5-meter-long beaked whales can be hard for scientists to observe as they tend to swim and feed mostly at depths of around 914 meters. At such depths, the animals have a better chance of avoiding their main predator, killer whales. If confirmed, this discovery will bring the number of known beaked whale species to 24.
Britain says it is re-emerging as a major trade force as it signs a free trade deal with Singapore. The deal covers bilateral trade over $23.4 billion and largely replicates the EU-Singapore Pact. UK Trade Minister Liz Truss signed the deal with a Singaporean counterpart, Chan Chun Sing, in the city-state. In a tweet, Truss said the agreement was the second biggest Britain has signed in the Asia-Pacific region. Ahead of the signing, she said London was re-emerging as a major force in the global trade. Singapore counts the United Kingdom as its third largest trading partner for goods and second largest for services. Trade between the two countries was valued at $13.5 billion in 2019. Most European stocks have edged up slightly as markets track the state of Brexit trade deal talks between the UK and the EU. London's FTSE 100, Italy's FTSE MIB and CAC 40 in Paris have all edged up marginally. Frankfurt's DAX is hovering around the flat line, but the European stock 600 has declined fractionally, with the tech stocks falling. Earlier in Asia, all major bourses shed except for the mainland Chinese stocks. In football, Real Madrid have defeated Borussia Mönchengladbach 2-0 in the UEFA Champions League fixture. Karim Benzema's two headers sent Madrid into the knockout stages.
Mönchengladbach have also qualified for the last 16. In a Group H match, Paris Saint-Germain hammered Istanbul Başakşehir 5-1. Neymar scored his third Champions League hat-trick to secure win for the French. The win moves PSG to the top of the Group H with 12 points. In a Group A fixture, Bayern Munich beat Lokomotiv Moscow 2-0 to remain atop group with 16 points. Niklas Süle and Eric Maxim scored one each for Bayern. In a Group C competition, Manchester City downed Marseille 3-0 to retain their top position in the group. Meanwhile, in Group D, Liverpool drew FC Midtjylland 1-1. While Atlanta beat Ajax 1-0.
Time to take a look at the weather situation from around the globe. that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.